welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have with us an excellent musician, John Wubbenhorst, who plays bunsuri. Many of you might not even know what that instrument is, but it is a beautiful flute from India. And John has been playing this for literally decades and has traveled around the world playing and is now part of a group that will be playing at the Atmananda Yoga Center in New York City on July 19th. It's a concert that, if you can make it, you will certainly be glad that you did, because the group is, it's really blissful. Before I even introduce John here, I want to just say that I had the pleasure of hearing him play a number of times, but this particular group has a magic to it that is just, it's really unparalleled in my experience of music, which has been really fairly extensive. So John is here. John is going to be playing, and it's something to catch. He is also a student of the teacher Adida, and he'll be speaking with us a little bit about his relationship to that and to this teacher. And this last CD, as a matter of fact, is called Facing Beloved, which is what they call Adida Samraj, and it's a very beautiful piece, and you'll be hearing of it throughout the show. So John, thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Good. Glad to have you. We've been trying to get this together for quite some time, and
yes, busy schedules.
Exactly. So what is it that brought you into playing bunsuri of all instruments in the first place?
I just love the sound. I've always loved the sound of flutes to begin with, but there's something especially about the bunsuri. It's especially heart-rendering. Seems to come directly from the heart. And I've always loved Indian music. So I had such a great love for Indian music, and this is the main flute that's used in Indian music.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you didn't wake up at age 13 and say, "Ma, I don't want to play piano, I want to play bunsuri." Or did you?
Well, it was not too far from that.
Oh, really?
I was very attracted
Maybe I shouldn't be surprised.
I was very attracted to flute.
Yeah.
In general, so I started playing Western flute, I was playing jazz, but at a pretty young age, 14 or 15, I got deeply into Indian music. I saw Ravi Shankar when I was 14 years old, and I was beginning meditating.
That's enough to do it.
Yeah, and I was just totally taken by that music. At that time, I did not have access to someone who played the bamboo flute, so I was just playing Indian as much as I could on my Western flute.
Yeah, interesting.
So it was quite later, it wasn't until I was like 28 that I actually met somebody who could play the bansuri flute, because there's not a lot of bansuri players in the United States.
How does it relate to shakuhachi?
Well, shakuhachi is another type of flute. Basically, they're both made out of wood. That's the similarities. Other than that, it's very different techniques.
Different technique. Is that what characterizes the different style of music?
Well, there's a whole.
Flutes themselves are really rather similar, aren't they?
Well, flute is common to every culture. You have recorders, you have pan flutes. Every culture has flute. It's one of those common instruments. Mm-hmm. But they're all different. They're all specific techniques. So if you want to play music with depth, you have to really devote yourself to that technique to really get the full depth. You can play around with it if you want to, but to get the full depth, even in South India, they have a different type of flute, and it's a whole different technique than North Indian music. So the specific flute that I play is from North India.
I see. You know, it's funny because as we were talking before the show, we discovered that we grew up in neighboring towns in Connecticut, and I too, at age 14 and 15, fell utterly in love with Indian music. And I used to go up, I don't know if you knew about this, but Wesleyan University had an amazing East Indian music department.
I'm very familiar with that.
I used to drive up there alone. I had no one who would come with me just to listen.
My father and brother went there, so I used to go there all the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Some of the first Indian music of this country, L. Shankar, was teaching at Wesleyan, and that's where he met John McLaughlin. They started the Shakti group.
Oh, yeah.
It was all around L. Shankar teaching at Wesleyan University.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So, another connection.
Yeah.
I used to drive up there in my little 1954 Volkswagen with one windshield wiper in the middle of the winter, freezing my butt off, but I just had to get to... Actually, I loved all the music, but I was particularly enchanted by the vocals.
Yes.
Which were just, otherworldly.
Incredible. It's an incredible musical tradition.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Now, you've studied in India.
Yes, I finally
went...
Yeah, I went to India for 2 years, and I met my teacher there, Hari Prasad Chaurasia. And then subsequently, he invited me to come to Holland. At the Rotterdam Conservatory in Holland, they have a world music department. And I majored in North Indian studies at the Rotterdam Conservatory with Hari Prasad teaching there. He's one of the main professors there. So, yeah, but I finally just decided I love this music so much, I just said, I'm going to India. I'll go right to the source and learn it. I sold everything and went to India.
That's great.
Haven't looked back.
The 60s were fabulous, were they? So were the 70s.
It was actually in 1992.
Oh, well. The 90s weren't bad either. Oh, God.
The music is timeless. That's the point.
Exactly. What's the big deal? It's so interesting how Indian music is inherently spiritual in nature.
The whole culture.
That's right. Unlike what we have as a Western tradition.
There's something more integrated about the Eastern approach in that they don't make all these differences. This is your spiritual life, and this is some of the music in Indian music is erotic, but it's never divorced from that underlying spiritual.
Sexuality isn't divorced from spirituality either.
It's not in reality in spiritual terms, but sometimes it does. In Western society, it gets separated.
I mean, in Indian.
In Indian, it's not.
No.
And that's the whole tantric traditions, etc. So the whole of life, and Indian music expresses the whole of life, but there's great Western music too. I mean, Bach to me.
Oh, by all means.
Bach and so many great musicians.
With the right ears, it's spiritual in nature. And in fact, Bach of all, was deeply religious. We know that.
It's all dedicated to God. So, but something I always loved Indian music. I still play all kinds of music. That's part of what our group Facing East is about, is that it's very Indian influenced, but we also have other musics we're into. So that's why we have pieces like Irish Raga, which is an Irish piece, but it's integrated with some Raga elements.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a good... Yes. And we have a guitarist in our group who's studied Brazilian and jazz and flamenco. We have a bass player. So they have a lot of Western elements as well. So it's sort of the Facing East group is sort of a mixture of different types of music, but with very strong Indian roots, you could say.
Well, I know that I've seen you perform a number of times, and I have always been just delighted. There was this one concert that I had attended of you at the Adidas Center, Adidam in downtown New York, not far from the World Trade Center at the time.
Yes.
And it was when you had the two Indian musicians with you playing Kanjira and the clay pot.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, you just blew everybody out of the audience. People were utterly out of their body and in bliss.
Yes.
From what was going on dynamically between you all. And yes, you'll get to get some taste of this later on in the show. I'll be airing some of the some footage from a similar concert.
Yeah,
Could you talk about the clay pot a little bit? Because
sure.
Most people think clay pot. Well, maybe I should cook in it.
Well,
and he was cooking.
Well, people, there's a tremendous melodic tradition, which is the ragas in Indian music. There's also a tremendous rhythmic tradition, and there's the North and South. And the North India has gotten a lot more press because tablas were so well popularized by Ravi Shankar. But there's an equally intense and incredible tradition of rhythm in South India. So I was really fortunate in 2000 where I was touring India with Steve Zerlin, our bass player, and we met these two incredible South Indian musicians. Maybe many people know them. Subhash Chandran plays what's called the guttam, which is literally a clay pot, and Ganesh Kumar plays the kanjira, which is about a 7-inch tambourine-sized frame drum covered with a female lizard skin.
Really?
Yes, and he gets an amazing depth of sound on that.
Unbelievable.
And on top of that, but it's not just the instruments. They're just some of the best musicians in the world. And so it's been really fantastic to play with them. It's just so inspiring. And they, in turn, were looking for Western musicians to play with, to integrate the Indian music with. So I was sort of looking for them, and they were looking for me. And on top of that, they come from a tradition of Guru Bhakti in South India, where they have their whole entire spiritual life is based on their relationship to their spiritual teacher. So when they met Steve Zerlin and myself, who are both devotees of Adidas Samraj, we had a sort of a similar spiritual language as well.
Yes.
And so they were very attracted to that. So it's, as Subhash would say, Jan Guru Bhakti's peoples, I like that ones very much. Very good peoples, divine peoples. So he appreciated
You
that.
have the accent done.
Yeah. So it's been a joy to play. It's just a joy to be around them as people. And that helps when you're playing music. But then they're also fantastic musicians. So we've really enjoyed playing with each other over the last 2 years, and finally we got a chance to really make a recording of the type of music we've been playing, and that's on our new CD, Facing Beloved.
Yes, Facing Beloved. And they have now met Beloved, is that so?
Yes, I had them come.
How did that all go?
That was a beautiful, beautiful occasion, because, I mean, playing for such an incredible spiritual master, Adidas Samraj, is just wonderful, and we as devotees like to bring him gifts, just because he's so. It's just part of the Guru Bhakti tradition is to bring your Guru gifts, and so it's wonderful.
It's an honor to do so.
Yes, and to play in the presence, the atmosphere is so imbibed with that deep spiritual darshan, is what they say.
Yes.
It's the word used in Indian. So it was a beautiful, because what was very nice is that because they have that tradition of Guru Bhakti, they approached him in a very traditional way. They knew, they had an idea who he was, and in fact, right away, Subhash said he could tell. He says, in fact, he told us afterwards. He says, "John, you have a great guru. I saw so many gurus. I don't see like this. He's very divine. He knows everything. I saw. He could just tell."
Yeah.
And
I saw he knows everything.
Very
interesting.
If you're attuned, if you're attuned to something, then you have subtlety. So he, in a very deep spiritual way, he was able to recognize
it's beautiful.
Adidas Samraj in a very deep way.
Could you talk a little bit about your relationship with Adida and how that informs, relates to, inspires your music?
Well, music is ultimately, an expression of whatever state of consciousness you're in. And I had read Adida. I'd been, I guess you could call, quote unquote, a spiritual seeker. I had tried different meditation techniques.
Looking for yourself, in other words.
Looking for different meditation masters, what's it all about, and I met some incredible people along the way, and along the way I was reading Adida's works, and I always thought, wow, he's obviously very intelligent person. I read his books, but one day a friend of mine went to visit him, a very close friend, and I picked him up from the airport, and he'd just been out to see Adida, and I felt this transmission. It was a literal transmission of this divine spirit force, is the best way I could describe it. I could just feel this force of God entering my whole body-mind. And I said, wow, this isn't just talk. This is a literal transmission. And then I realized that he's more than just a very intelligent man, which you can tell if you read his books. Okay,
Sure.
He's very intelligent, but it's much deeper than that. It's a literal transmission of as he says,
Shakti.
well, he says God is always already the case. There's no question that the God exists, but we are contracting away from it. He's someone who's not contracting away from it at all. He is that divine person that is living and breathing all of us. He is that unqualifiedly. And so, that's nice to say, but when you actually experience that, it's just overwhelming. And I soon went out to play for him, and I remember driving down from Los Angeles and just being totally overwhelmed, my whole body, mind. In fact, I felt so invaded. I literally knew that I was the entire universe. There was no intellectual things about it. But I knew it was him somehow. It was very personal. And I realized, and it was very unique. I had never experienced this type of samadhi before.
He was helping to confer the opening in you?
Well, the feeling I had was that he is me, because he is that divine person.
Yeah.
We're all that divine person, but we're all contracted away from it.
Truly.
So in that moment, I totally felt oneness with that. And it's an ongoing process. I didn't stay in that state. But more and more, I'm coming to see how I have contracted away from it, and in my devotional relationship to him, I'm being shown and widened and expanded. It's an ordeal. You have to be very serious, and he's a very serious spiritual master. It's not a casual relationship. Right. You have to really devote your whole life, and you have to really want to know the truth.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible joy. It's similar in some ways to Indian music. If you want to learn music, it's a tremendous discipline, but there's tremendous joy in it.
Yeah.
And I have a spiritual master with the music, Hari Prasad Chaurasia, and I have to.
Right.
It's a tremendous ordeal to learn from him, and there's so many subtleties, but you just throw yourself into it.
The point is that you continue even though you have literally decades behind you.
There's no end. There's no end. I think
Yeah.
Saraswati is the goddess of knowledge, and she supposedly invented all of music, all of the arts, everything.
That's right.
And she said, what I know is one grain of sand next to the ocean. So you can easily spend your whole life on one raga. You could easily spend your whole life playing one Bach flute sonata. You could easily spend your whole... This is deep subjects. So there's no end. There's no end to that.
And when you say that, could you be a little bit more explicit? I mean, I could just say, yeah, I know what you mean, and there is a level on which it's true. But I want to know what you mean when you say that. Take a raga, for instance.
Well, a raga is a very deep subject. It's like... there are literally hundreds of melodies that could be played from one raga. You could play the same raga, hundreds of melodies. There are hundreds of rhythmic time signatures you could play it in. It's like the blues. You could spend your whole depth and different... Within the blues, there's a huge variation of things you could do. And each raga is very vast. Like that's a whole vast realm of music. And there's hundreds of these ragas.
But if are you talking about just one raga?
One raga is very vast. Is very vast subject. There's
So-
some teachers that used to just teach one raga for the first 8 or 10 years of a student's study. So it's a deep subject.
Now, so like in scored Western music, what are the benchmarks of what you must follow to stay within the terms, the parameters of a particular raga?
It's like a person. A raga is like a person. You can learn all these technical things.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're this tall,
Time
you have a
signature.
certain, time signature, these things. There's many variations, but ultimately it's an abstract color of consciousness. So it's not easy to define it. There's a certain scale, a certain way of going up and down the scale, certain keynotes.
I see.
But it's hard to say those are the raga. The raga is something. It's like, I might say
Bigger than.
Right. You're 5'10", you're this, you're that, but you're more than just that.
Yes, exactly. It's larger than the sum of the parts.
Right.
in other
Exactly.
words. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's incredible. If you would just make one reference, say some comment about the nature of microtones. This is something that Westerners don't even typically know about. And, they have a relationship of C to C sharp to D sharp. And, in their minds, it's imprinted that this is music. When, when you look at Indian music, you've got an entirely different, so many tones within the C and the C sharp. Could you just comment on a little of that so people could kind of open up the
well,
ears for that?
some people say they have 22 divisions of the octave, but really each raga has its own frequency pattern. And that frequency pattern has very degree of subtleties, and some of them have a C sharp that's extra sharp or extra flat. Some notes are actually a wave going between 2 or 3 notes. Some notes have specific, but in general, each raga has a frequency of notes, and those frequencies of notes have their own specific character. One might be a little bit sharp, one might be a little bit flatter. So they're not within a tempered scale.
Are you aware, John, of the use of music Ayurvedically?
Yes. Yes.
So, in other words, certain ragas would be relating to specific organs or designed to have an effect on lightening an organ or what have
I've
you?
felt that myself.
Uh-huh.
I've felt it. I felt that certain ragas are better. Certain ragas would be good for certain people to play. In fact, certain people play certain ragas especially well because their personality is suited to it.
Yes, I see.
So, and I think there'll be more and more of these connections being made. I'm starting to do in Washington, D.C., where I live, a service where it's a raga sound therapy, where people put on headphones and I'll play a raga specifically for them, and then we have it recorded right on the spot, and they take it home and they listen to it. And it's, I think at some point it'll be like, take these ragas, Take it twice a
Text you in
day.
the morning, right.
Call me in the morning. Take this
Right.
twice a day for 30 days and come back and we'll see how you're doing.
Exactly.
It'll be sound therapy.
That's right.
I think that'll be happening more and more.
Definitely. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're doing that. I think that's a
Yeah.
great service.
Yeah.
In addition to all of the other wonderful service.
Yeah, it's
I'm
just
so glad you became a musician.
me too. Me too.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah, absolutely. Now we'll give people a taste in person of your playing.
Yeah, I hope that people come out to the concert, they can get a
Yeah.
real taste of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you just heard it, and now you're going to see some of John Wubbenhorst and the group playing. And again, if you can make it July 19th at Upmananda Center downtown on Broadway, there will be information on this throughout the show. And please come and join us. I think you'll have a time very worth your Jay Rabin for a Better World. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.